Go. All right.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Measuring Flicks. I'm Karl Hartley.
I'm Max Peterson. You really hold on to the S.
I did. I held on to that
often.
S. Do I?
Sometimes, yeah. You did on our first Patreon episode, which we just recorded.
Correct.
How's that for a segue?
Actually done so.
So before we get into anything today, I will tell you what movie we're doing. We are going to talk about 1992's Unforgiven, directed by and starring Clint Eastwood, also featuring Morgan Freeman, Gene Hackman, and a bevy of other interesting folks. But before we get too far into the movie, or even get started on the movie, we want to talk about Patreon for just a second.
Oh, what the heck is Patreon, Maxwell?
Well, Patreon, I'm glad you asked, young Karl. Let's just do everything super stilted for the rest of the time.
That'd be great. Fair enough.
Just radio announcer voices for the rest of the show. Patreon is a patronage. It's a way for artists to get paid, for creative types and creative people to get paid for the things that they create.
Like podcasts.
Like podcasts, exactly. Like podcasts, like music. There are artists on there. Just basically anybody who makes anything to show anyone or have anyone listen to or enjoy. Basically, fans who think that the way that we're doing it is we're putting out Measuring Flicks every week. We're always going to do that. It'll be every week on iTunes because we love doing this show. And if you think that we deserve a little bit of scratch for what we're doing, a couple bucks here or there or whatever you can afford, you can head on over to Patreon and find a whole bunch of other cool shit, extra content, rewards, things like that. The big thing that we're doing for this show, for Measuring Flicks, is we are doing bonus episodes. And these are not 15-minute bonus episodes.
No, these are full
We are doing whole entire other Patreon episodes. We might have to even like reassess how much we're doing because I was thinking about it. And if we keep the pace we're doing here and Patreon, we're gonna do like 2 series at the same time. It's like recording 2 shows.
It is.
But yeah. So there's a lot of. If you head on over to Patreon, we're talking about it right now because we just recorded our first Patreon episode. So what we did over there is we are doing movies that might not fit in the main season. Movies that we're going to do some horror films that are maybe a bit too much for the main season.
Yeah, a little too heavy, a little too
rough. We're doing some we're going to do some like shock films. We're going to do some exploitation films that might be a touch too far for the main season. Our first series that we're doing over on Patreon is a good example. We're doing all 4 I Spit on Your Grave movies with my awesome feminist badass wife Bird. The first episode was really fun.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun recording it.
I was expecting it to be more like our regular show where we're like
unpacking the movie and like
pulling things apart, diving deep. It wasn't. It was not. It was like 3 people sitting around with beers just being like, man, did you see when that dude's head exploded? That was crazy. It was really fun.
And that's the sort of thing you can expect on Patreon.
Yeah. So it's not all going to be beyond the pale horror. No. We're also going to do like our next series that we're going to do on Patreon after this one is done. We're going to do a Guillermo del Toro series. We're going to examine his films. We have 8 Quentin Tarantino episodes planned. We're going to do more Westerns. If you're liking the Western series we're doing now, but
we're having so much fun with Westerns. Like I just want to keep going on the Western train, man.
After finding out that you had never seen Shane.
That's on the list.
And everyone out there who's like, you fucking idiots, why didn't you cover Tombstone? Well, head on over to Patreon, and sometime this year you will probably see an episode featuring Tombstone. There's lots of cool stuff you can get over there. You can get bonus episodes. You can get our ill-begotten but still delightful Season 0. Yep. Some of my favorite conversations are in that.
Yeah,
where
The Wrestler.
Yeah.
I love the
Wrestler was
Coke,
great.
no good for heart, no good for family is one of my favorite quotes from the infamous Lost season.
The Lost season. Coke, no good for hearts. No good for families. Yeah, so you can go and listen to the first 7 episodes we ever did, which didn't make it into our official Season 1 start. You can get a shout out on the show. You can get to suggest. Basically, you can get, if at a high enough level of patronage, you can pick movies for us to watch and sort of produce episodes. Yep. So there's all sorts of cool stuff that over on Patreon, which at the time that you are listening to this will be live. So you can go over there and check that stuff out.
And where do they find that, Maxwell?
They can find that at patreon.com/Max Peterson. The reason that it's not Measuring Flicks is I'm using the Patreon as a sort of catch-all for a bunch of artistic projects that I'm going to be doing, many of them also with you. film projects, radio projects, etc., etc. So if you go to patreon.com/MaxPeterson for lots more bonus
Boom shakalaka.
content. But anyway,
Yes.
in the meantime, let's get back to
Zivestans.
wah, wah, wah. We are in the shit with Unforgiven.
This is the last one.
No, Searchers is the last one.
Oh, we did it.
Yeah, we recorded.
Dude.
We promised we weren't going to do this, but we did not have time to record the Unforgiven episode.
right,
So we
yeah,
did
yeah.
Searchers a little bit ahead of time, which you will hear next week, but which we recorded last week.
We're going to try and stop doing that.
My
because-
God, the time travel in this episode is as bad as
bad as the
the
last
I Spit
one?
on Your Grave episode that we just did. Yeah, so this is not the last one. This will be the second to last one, the penultimate one, if you will. But no, this is so we're doing Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven. It's not quite like the other westerns we watched.
It is not. And actually, like, I'm just going to come right out and say what because we watched this a week ago.
Right.
So I've had a whole week to like stew on it and
stew and
sit
process.
And okay, so I originally watched Unforgiven when it came out. And I was unimpressed.
Really?
Not unimpressed so much. It just felt like another. It felt not forced. That's not what I'm trying. It just felt like a '90s action movie that didn't happen until the very end of the movie, and it just felt very slow. And I didn't care for the acting in it, especially the young guy that comes to find Clint Eastwood to come and avenge the
whatchamacallit kid.
The whatchamacallit, the Cincinnati kid or whatever. That's
Schofield.
The Schofield kid.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just remember, I was like, and so I've watched this movie several times, and I've always wanted. I find myself wanting to like it, but just can't. And I know I'm gonna probably get flamed for that.
Did you
because
turn around on it at all, or are you still in that camp?
No, in fact, I'm almost, like more firmly in the camp of like this is just kind of an okay movie.
I am hoping that I can turn you around a touch. I think there's things in this movie that, because it was weird when I sat down to watch it. I had a DVD copy from I think I was like 14. I used to go to Walmart and I would get my dad to buy me any movie that I could get my dad to buy me any movie that he liked that was R-rated. So I'd go and to find some R-rated, like 6 R-rated movies and be like, Dad, are these good? And he's like, you're not watching those. And I'm like, what about this one? It's Clint Eastwood. He's like, oh, it's a classic.
That's a great one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
But I threw it into my 42-inch widescreen television, and it was full screen. And normally that's okay for me, but for whatever reason, after watching those last 2 movies that we watched in that panoramic, beautiful Vista widescreen, seeing that box, I was like, fuck this. I cannot watch this movie this way. So I went and bought a digital copy on Vudu and watched it that way. And so I've seen this movie like 3 or 4 times, and I was with you until I watched it this time.
Interesting.
Because we have done so much digging and unpacking of Westerns that I think I was able to see facets and nuance here, where before I was just seeing like Clint Eastwood tried to do another Western or something like that.
Yeah.
Like one of the big things that I noticed, which I really, really loved, was we've talked in the past, especially in season 0, which you can find on patreon.com, about how there can be non-character elements of a film which are themselves characters. For example, Tom Hardy's body in Bronson, Daniel Day-Lewis's eyes, essentially. There are little things like we just did Christian Bale's like thinness.
Oh, his body, his
in The Machinist.
emaciated body.
His emaciation is a character, for sure. And in this one, I would say Clint Eastwood's face is a character. Mm-hmm. Now, like Clint Eastwood is, or Bill Money, we should say.
William Money.
William Money. Which, I don't know, maybe that's a little too on the nose since they're going to do murder for money. But Bill Money's face, that like, at this point in Clint Eastwood is still alive, and this is 1992, and he looks old as fuck.
Like, he looks like he's like 89, 90 years old.
90-year-old Bill Money.
He's leathered. I mean, just...
What I wrote down and liked about this is those lines on his face. If you gave a young actor to a makeup department, they would put lines on an actor's face to tell their backstory. Like he's lived a hard life and he would age in certain ways based on his backstory. And it occurred to me that Clint Eastwood's actual lines on his actual face are an accurate backstory for his character because he spent most of his youth and young life making spaghetti westerns.
Oh, shit.
So all those Sergio Leone movies where he's out baking in the desert and he's out there like getting windblown and sandblasted and is getting too much sun, which is just turning his face into this like apocalyptic craggy wasteland. When we get to Bill Money, he has genuinely lived
lived that life.
He's lived that life.
Clint Eastwood himself
Clint Eastwood, the actor himself, has lived a life that makes him appropriate to play that character.
Perfect.
He's been in just the fact you can. Now I know this is not in the script and not in the film.
Well, no.
But when you look, when I watch this movie, I imagine the Man with No Name trilogy.
Yes, and this is sort of the fourth iteration of that.
Well, now we find out who the Man with No Name is, or something like that.
He picked up the seat when because when I first watched this movie, I watched it. I'm a huge Sergio Leone fan. The Once Upon a Time in the West is one of the most amazing films ever. Of course, the Man with No Name trilogy.
Was that his last Western?
I don't really recall.
It's pretty recent.
As a big of a fan, I don't know the exact chronology.
Right. But it's one of his later ones. I love that movie too.
Like Once Upon a Time in America too, which is fantastic. But like when I saw this movie, I was already a fan of the Man with No Name trilogy, and I went into it as younger Karl, thinking of this as the fourth in that movie.
Or we're expecting
that.
Yeah.
Well, that was sort of the buzz when this movie came out too. It's like one is Clint Eastwood's return to the genre. I think Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was the one before this. I mean, there was a large chunk of time between him doing westerns,
right?
Because he did the whole Dirty Harry franchise, and then everything else in between, and a bunch of directing. But
is it Clint Eastwood in Any Which Way But Loose?
It is, and Any Which Way You Can. Yeah, there's two of them. But it's
yeah.
But so even as young Karl going in to watch Unforgiven, and sort of having that backstory in my mind, I was still disappointed, even like viewing it through the lens of William Money is the man with no name who found the right woman, who cleaned him up, who quit him of his evil drinking, and had 2 kids. She died of whatever the hell she died, the fever, but now they're raising pigs and the pigs are sick, and the whole thing. I'm just like, really? Okay. It's just, ugh. I'm sorry, I was making sounds instead of a point, but that is how I feel about this movie. It's like maybe I set myself up too much for the expectation of it to be the fourth in a Sergio Leone style, which of course it isn't.
No, but I think it's sort of in a way a product of the Sergio Leone style. Clearly. Because it's Clint Eastwood who
it's a love note to Sergio Leone, clearly.
In a way, but I also think it's sort of a deconstruction of Sergio Leone in a way. One of the things that I really enjoy about this film, when I first started watching it, and I wrote a note, and then I corrected that note like 3 lines down, and I wrote, I was not impressed with Clint Eastwood's acting at first. Now, I know that you are not, but I came to be, because I wrote down Eastwood's acting is stiff. And then 3 lines later, I wrote, Eastwood's acting is stiff the way a hinge rusts, sort of creaking within a limited range uncomfortably. And what I think I was getting at with that was there's a weird stilted stiffness to him in the beginning before he gets his guns and gets back on his horse. When he's talking to his kids, especially in the scene where he's getting up onto his horse and the horse is like running around in circles, he's like
the ongoing gag that he can't get on his horse.
Right, and he's like, this horse is getting back at me for all the cruelty I've done to animals. And then he gets up on his horse and he's like, remember that your beloved sainted mother's looking down on you and God loves you. It's his delivery for me. I know that you read it differently, but for me it felt intentional, as in he's just
saying these words.
He's just saying these things, but they're kind of like flat cardboard to him.
Right.
Right?
He doesn't mean them, really. He wants to mean them because he's trying to...
And I would... Well, I would say that his performance changes, not even subtly, but fairly dramatically after he drinks whiskey.
Well,
again.
as soon as he drinks the whiskey, he flips the switch, right? I mean,
it goes like the end of this movie could be like the nihilistic cousin to High Plains Drifter.
Oh yeah,
it's like almost supernatural how fucking
how
like
he rolls in,
how
and just
violent, and he's
his face is. I mean, I will give him that. Is like, and that I don't want anyone to. I love Clint Eastwood. I love his movies, his directing, like the Dirty Harry. For like, it's just this movie I happen to like not be a fan of his acting in.
Sure.
Not that I need to defend myself from like
no
not
God,
liking Clint Eastwood.
that's what we're doing.
But,
like I think we talked about how his politics can be a titch questionable here and there,
certainly.
and yet at the same time it's easy to love Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's but when he does roll into town, there is his eyes are there. It's frightening.
Yeah.
It's like the devil has rolled into town.
God
to
damn
collect
it. Yes.
souls. That is
yes. Well, it's hard not to. I mean, I'm sure we all noticed it, but he rides a pale horse. Mm-hmm. Like he literally rolls in as death to town.
And that's another moment where I'm like, oh, womp womp. Okay.
So you didn't like it?
No,
I loved it.
It's heavy-handed bullshit.
Oh
like,
my God. There's okay. Well,
but
then, obviously, we're as always we are assuming that you have seen the film.
Yes.
We're just gonna spoil the fuck out of it. I want to see. Okay, so I liked that touch. He rode a pale horse because he comes into town and he's just like this embodiment of death.
And they're not beating you over the head with it. I mean,
yeah, they're not like
a subtle touch.
They're not like William Money's on a pale horse,
right?
Or whatever. But there's two touches that I really loved. One is cinematography. Both of them are kind of cinematography, but one is metaphor. The choice of this film to allow natural shadow. Mm-hmm. A lot of times in movies, when you get a hard overhead shadow, what they'll do is they'll take basically it's like a reflective screen, which is called fill light or bounce light.
Bounce light, yep.
Where you can't see your actor's face, and why are you paying your actor like $4 million to do the movie if you can't see his face? So they put a bounce light or fill light under him to sort of create a softer shadow, so you can make out features. This movie does complete black shadow. Mm-hmm. When he's sitting at the table and he's
shaking,
you can't see anything above his upper lip. Period. It's black.
Well, he has his whole collar. Up, too.
But when you look around the bar, everyone's that way. Anyone who has a hat on, their face is gone in shadow, and it creates when you have a room full of people and zero faces, it creates a weird sort of tension. So. The last scene, I want to pick your brain on this because if the pale horse is heavy-handed, I want to see what you think of the very end. Because when he is one of my favorite lines of all time at the very end, when he's screaming at the town and he's like, "Don't treat no women bad either, or I'll come back and kill every one of you."
Yes,
and he literally says he will fucking kill the whole town. But part of what makes that so amazing, I want to get back to that line, but what makes that so amazing is his whole face. Even when he's turning and there's light, the way his hat is sitting, you never see his eyes.
Face.
He looks like you said it perfectly. He looks like the goddamn devil. Mm-hmm. He looks like death on that horse. Not like withered death, but like no one is doubting that he could come back and kill everybody in the town. Then what is the ultimate cliche of a Western? Ride off into the sunset. Mm-hmm. And in Unforgiven, he rides into utter blackness. Yeah. What did you think of that? I just said that and my hair stood up on my arms. I got fucking chills.
Yeah, that's a nice touch.
That was a nice touch, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, absolutely.
I will build a thesis and I will argue, but
perfect.
But no, at the end of the movie though, right? Like when that culmination, like this is Clint Eastwood's. As far as we know, like he's 106 years old or whatever. He might do another one. I don't know. But as far as we know, this is his last word on the Western. Mm-hmm. And to spend his life riding into the sunset. Think about that. Just as an actor, as a man, as basically an icon of the Western. He spent his life riding into the sunset. And the last statement that he makes is riding off into the darkness. The ultimate subversion.
Yeah.
There's something beautiful and like weirdly touching about that, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, good.
No, I would agree. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Pale Horse, I will give you. Sometimes, maybe there's a touch of like, really, Clint Eastwood, but when
Right.
he threatens to kill the whole goddamn town and then rides into the black.
That's like, oh, fuck me.
Something to...
that whole, the last reel of this movie, I am a fan
I
of.
love that we still talk in reels, too.
I know, isn't that weird?
That's such a film nerd thing to do. The
it's
final
like
reel.
It's in the third act.
Yeah.
The final reel that I am a fan of.
Yeah.
It's everything. The first two acts are fucking garbage in this movie, if you ask me. So.
Oh, no, Karl. From hell's heart, you stabbing me.
But no, the third act that is, it is the devil come to town. It is the High Plains Drifter, like exponentially more so in its, the gunfight with what is it that Gene Hackman says when he's about to die? I was. It's like he can't die because I was building a house. Like that chills me more than anything in this when he's about to kill Gene, and Gene Hackman doesn't want to die, and he's like I was building a house. It's like
There's a famous story about that. I think it's Neil Gaiman tells the story, but he was out with an author friend of his, and the author got mugged at gunpoint. And the first thing out of his mouth was, "You can't kill me. I'm a writer." And there's a weird...
Yeah.
I kind of felt that way about Bill Daggett, or Little Bill Daggett, where he's like... Where Little Bill's like, "My house isn't done. This isn't where I die.
You have something that you're doing.
I have a house to finish." Right. That
to me is chilling.
This movie, the way that this movie treats violence is... I think exceptional, especially because we've seen a couple of Westerns.
Like the Duck of Death getting beat.
The Duck of Death, Jesus. For me, there's two that really stand out. There's three moments that really stand out, but two in particular. One is when the Schofield kid shoots that guy, and is under the tree and is sitting there like
drinking whiskey, like it's iced tea.
There's. Part of me wants to love everything in this movie, but I will say the scene with the kid under the tree, I just wanted Eastwood to back him off.
Yeah, just
like a touch.
Yeah.
He's pretty close, but god damn it, that like take a drink, wipe your mouth
with
and
it,
then do the same motion again, and he's just...
And kind of pulling the trigger, like his whole performance is shit.
I wouldn't say shit. I think for me, the part of the reason that I don't say the performance is shit is I think before this, you don't see remorse in Westerns very often.
Oh no.
We saw a touch of it when Paul Newman shoots those guys in Butch Cassidy, where
Butch Cassidy was feeling the remorse.
What's his remorse? He sits kind of quietly and stares into the fire, and we loved it because it's a subtle touch. And then he goes subtle, and this kid goes like 5% too far, maybe 10% too far. But I don't care
for that character.
The Schofield kid.
No.
Then let's talk about just the Schofield kid.
Okay, let's. Because
I like his function in this movie, which is...
This is written incredibly poorly as a function.
Really?
You don't seem like no rootin' tootin' is cowboy, like come the fuck
No,
on.
but that's what I like about it. Okay, this is why I like the Schofield kid. Oh, this is going to be another Prisoners episode.
This is Prisoners.
This is the Prisoners part 2.
People that are Patreons.
Yeah, for Patreon supporters, go and listen to the Prisoners episode where Karl and I disagreed, but to great effect.
Oh, yes.
Okay, the Schofield kid. The Schofield kid to me is us. He is the kid who has grown up watching Westerns. He's been hearing the stories.
Reading the books. And
he's been hearing the stories, and he has no idea what the reality is. And I would say that the thesis of this movie is Eastwood trying to present what would probably be the reality. Mm-hmm. So the Schofield kid, first of all, the fact that he's blind... Right? Like, he can barely see 50 yards. He's like, his vision's not that great.
What's you shooting at?
And the first thing he says when he gets to Clint Eastwood is, "You don't look like a killer." And I think that is intentional, because...
He wouldn't be able to see him anyways.
He's not... He doesn't look like a killer because the kid isn't seeing him clearly.
Right.
And then... Like, that's why when other people see Clint Eastwood and find out who he is, they're immediately like, "Oh, fuck." you're Bill Money. Oh boy, this is not good.
Right.
But that kid who sees everything kind of fuzzy. He sees everything through a powder filter.
Sure.
He sees, he's got that haze of nostalgia for the West. So when he sees Bill Money, who is a fucking brutal murderer, like we find out later on. Well, we even find out later on that the stories the kid has heard are under-exaggerated.
Right.
He's like, I heard you killed 3 men, and then later Ned's like, wasn't it 5 men? And Bill's like, I don't know, I was fucking drunk whole time.
Yeah.
But like, he's even more of a brutal motherfucker than
the stories tell.
So yeah, right. But anyway, so the Schofield kid shows up and he's bragging about his gun, and he's like, I killed man, right? But really, he's a kid, and he doesn't realize what these stories mean. When you hear he killed 5 men, you're like, Jesus, that's impressive. But when he finds out what killing 1 man means, you know what I mean? Like he's put into the reality. But the other thing is because he's never killed a man, because he's basically he's the Roy Rogers.
Right, yes.
He's a kid dressed up in a Roy Rogers costume.
He wants to play cowboys and cowboys.
Right, so he's basically like a farmer or something, right? Who's been like, I'm gonna be a gunman, and he talks. His dialogue is not realistic character dialogue. His dialogue is what he
read in the books, maybe,
or what he thinks these like hard case cowboys talk like. And I think what points to that is how over exaggerated it is. He's not like you don't look like no killer. He's like, you don't look like no son of a bitch and goddamn shit fucking ass cock bitch and killer. You know, like it's so over the top that he's like, I'm gonna talk rough like this, like these guys do.
All right.
So watching, he's also until we let Eastwood off the chain with that half a fifth of whiskey that he just puts down. Oh my God, I love that when he takes that bottle from the kid and he's drinking mechanically. He's numbing himself for what he's going to go do.
He's taking his medicine is what he's doing.
Yeah.
It's just like,
It's almost like he's like stoking the fire back up, or waking up that thing that meanness in him.
Because he knows what it's going to do, right? And
he's going to go threaten to kill a whole town and be able to follow through on it. But until we let Eastwood off the chain and get that fucking high violent madness, the Schofield kid's our POV character, essentially. He's we share his disappointment when Bill Money gets sick. We're like, what?
Oh, this is garbage, right?
Well, we're like, when does John Wayne never got sick? Fucking,
yeah, he's got his, when he gets kicked out of town by Gene. He's like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
they just kicked the shit out of him.
They beat the shit out of him. And how hard is it to watch John Wayne? How hard is it to watch Clint Eastwood crawling like a worm on that bar floor? So when we see that and we're like, God damn it, Clint Eastwood, pull yourself together. You're a fucking badass.
Right.
We are the Schofield kid. Where we're like, why are you doing this? You're a crazy. You're a legend. You're a god. Why aren't you shooting all these men in the face? You must not have been armed. Because if you'd been armed, you'd have killed them all. But no, this.
And if you hadn't had like a fever of 105 and like couldn't think clearly.
But that's not reality.
That's not reality.
That is that powder filter Western. What we are seeing is Clint Eastwood.
Because we wanted him as the audience member, right, to stand up to Bill Money to stand up to him then.
Well,
and like take the duster off and beat his ass,
or to
with
say his
the
name and see fear come into his eyes. You know, like he's a sick old guy shivering. And when I first watched this movie again, because it's been years since I saw it, when he walks up, I misremembered that was the shootout.
Yeah, you're right.
So he gets up there and he's like, "All right, stranger, what you got a piece on you?" I'm just waiting for him to be like, moment. Bill Money, and everyone to be like, or to have him just like and just blow everyone the fuck away like he does in the end. I was waiting for Clint Eastwood to be Clint Eastwood, but he's not.
Yeah.
You know what Clint Eastwood is? He's a sick old man, is what he is, and it's unpalatable.
Yeah. Wow, that just did a thing.
I'm sorry. So that's
no. That did a thing to my brain because part of my reaction to this movie is just that. And why I don't care for it is because you don't. But wow, I'm not saying you've changed. But that was a very good point, though.
Yeah. But
because that's the irritation. I get irritated very easily watching movies. Sometimes when a shot will linger too long on someone doing something monotonous, like they're talking about making a sandwich and they start making the sandwich. I'm like, oh, please don't make me watch them make the entire fucking sandwich. This is going to drive me fucking crazy, right? As I get irritated very easily sometimes. Yeah. And so I feel like the Clint Eastwood arriving to town the first time and is sick, it's like, are you really going to make me watch him make the sandwich of him like being sick and then getting better and then coming? I don't have time for that sandwich to be made. Like, I'm an impatient audience member at that point.
Right.
I think that's the sort of point, though. That's why that was done that way, intentionally.
Yeah, I think there's...
Like, the expectation is there that it's Clint Eastwood and he's going to kick fucking ass.
We know how a Clint Eastwood Western works. Yeah. And this is not how they work.
So my reaction is like, I don't fucking like this.
Right.
But it's fucking brilliant.
In a way, yeah.
You just, totally like, is. That, like, blew a whole part of my brain up just now.
The thing for me is there are Westerns that are geared two different ways.
Right.
There's the Leone Westerns, there's the John Wayne Westerns,
yeah.
And then there's a Western that we're not going to do in the main show, but I'd like to maybe visit in Patreon, which is The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. That's almost 3 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
And there are like 30-minute chunks of that's just like Brad Pitt like riding a horse through the snow and like getting down off his horse. There's a specific scene I have in my mind where they're riding across a lake, and he clears the snow off the ice and looks at his reflection in the ice for a long time, while his two companions just kind of stand around and don't do anything. There's like minutes of silence in my memory. I'm not sure if I'm remembering correctly, but then he doesn't even like quick draw and do it like something impressive. He takes his gun out really slowly and cocks it and shoots his reflection, and then puts his gun away and gets back on his horse. Like, the amount of time that they take out of the driving the plot forward to show us that is weirdly dissonant when you're watching a Western. Because you're like, this is Jesse James. Why isn't he drawing guns and robbing banks?
You want the Young Guns too.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. You want Young Guns. You want. By the way, I was watching Young Guns the other day. It was on TV at work.
I just watched it again recently, too, to be honest with you.
And I realized, is it Chavez? That's the name?
Chavez, yeah.
Fucking Chavez is Henry Standing Bear from Longmire. The bartender. The Native American bartender from Longmire is Chavez.
It's Lou Diamond Phillips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had no fucking idea. I was watching that, and I'm like, is that Longmire's Native American friend? Is that Henry Standing Bear? And then I go on IMDb, and I'm like, holy shit! Rock and roll.
But that's what you expect, though, like from is that sort of Young guns blazing when you
right, and especially with Clint Eastwood, because if you watched High Plains Drifter and then watched this without being prepared for the shift and for it almost, you know what, this movie is it's like right on the borderlands of like art film. Because it's such a thorough deconstruction of everything else that Clint Eastwood's done with the Western that you're like, what? What am I watching? I just read one of my own notes and was like, this is a good way to put it. The Schofield kid has got the accoutrements and the trappings, but he doesn't have the teeth for it. I don't know why I like the way that worked, but this is the last movie we watched before this was The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. This, I think, is a good pairing back to back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially, I know you made fun of it a second ago, but the scene with was it English Bob?
The Duke of Death.
The Duke,
right? English
the Duck
Bob,
of Death. Yeah, the Duke of Death.
The Duck of Death.
The Duck of Death. I says duck, but the story of Two Gun Corky and English Bob is a total Valance situation because the writer guy's like, you know. Two Gun Corky was offending a woman, and I defended his honor, and he shot him down. And then you
find out that it's not.
And what I love about that is we've also been hearing stories about Bill Money the whole movie, where it's like he shot down two men, and he was, he robbed a bank, and he was a mean son of a bitch. But what we hear again and again from Ned and Bill is like, I don't remember doing that. I was drunk. That's like the refrain of this movie is like,
I don't remember that.
I remember I was drunk. And I remember that I was drunk. And then like there's I want to get back to English Bob because I actually kind of like his performance. Like he's pretty solid. Yeah. But when they're around the campfire and Bill just says, "Do you remember that fella that I shot in the mouth? His teeth came out the back of his head." And Ned's like, and he's just like, I've been thinking about him a lot lately. And that's like it.
That's it.
That's it. That is a actual Western story.
Right.
It's not like, and he came onto my ranch and he was threatening my family, and I said, partner, fill your hand. It's not that. It's like, I even think he says, like, I don't remember why I shot him because he was drunk.
Because he was drunk.
But, like, the story's not like I was defending him. He's like, remember that guy and his teeth came out of the back of his head when I shot him? It's pretty fucked up, right, Ned?
Pretty messed up, right?
Anyway, I'm going to go to bed now. Have a good night.
Good night.
That is a fucking Western story. And that story of Two Gun Corky where he's, like, shot his own toe off.
Right, yes.
Couldn't get his gun up because he was shit-faced. English Bob is shit-faced. English Bob misses like three shots.
Yep.
Like, there are no heroes. They're just drunken, violent men. And mythologizing. That's what this movie's about. This movie is a story of stories, man. Anyway.
And it's a story itself, too. And that's probably why I get disappointed when I watch it, because you're expecting that story of... Because if Clint Eastwood is...
Yeah.
The man with no name, because he lived that life.
Yeah.
And, you know what I mean? I mean, he didn't...
Right.
You know, he's in the Westerns and he lived that... Like,
the actor was in...
You're expecting that legend, and sometimes, like, you don't get the legend is something different than what your expectation is, right? So... And that's what we get in this movie until the end, and then holy fuck, it's worse than you expected.
Yeah, and it's the thing I love about the end too is they could have done with that big shootout when they kill his friend and his friend's on display.
Oh,
he's
Morgan
like,
Freeman, yeah,
yeah,
right?
when Ned's dead, and he says, like, his last thing he says is, you know, he says the line that you expect the hero to say, "You bury my friend right." Yeah. And then his next line is another thing you'd expect heroes to say, and it's either like treating women or treating whores bad, neither. And you're like, okay, still a hero. And then he goes, or I'll come back and I'll kill every last one of you. And you're like, holy
not what the hero
shit,
says, right?
Clint Eastwood. But what I love about that last shootout is you could make it a John Wayne shootout, or you could make it a Clint Eastwood shootout, or, you know, where he draws and
it's dirty.
He shoots everyone and they got their... Clint Eastwood shoots an unarmed man on the ground on his way out of the bar. The guy's like...
He's not fighting fair.
Not at... Oh, my God, no.
All. Yeah.
So he's like... He, like, fills his hands. Some people in the bar aren't armed.
And he's blowing them away.
He's just like, blam, blam, blam. He shotguns one guy, point blank.
Yep.
Just like, he points the gun at the proprietor, right? Yeah. And the proprietor's just like, oh...
Shit.
And they're talking for a second, and then Clint Eastwood just fucking ices him with a shotgun.
Destroys him, yeah.
So that dude didn't have a gun in his hand. Clint Eastwood shot that guy in cold blood.
Yeah.
So once again, we're not watching a hero shootout. We're watching a true story of the West. We're watching what the West was, which was Clint Eastwood is now he's not a hero. He's a murderer.
He's a murderer. A drunk
murderer. He's a drunk, violent man. Yeah. That's all this movie is. So he's guns down everybody. And I read something interesting on IMDb, and I went back and watched, and I was like, oh my God, it's true. He fires the 2 shotguns and fires 6 rounds. So when he threatens those people in the bar, he has an empty gun.
Oh my God.
He's threatening them with an empty gun. But they just watched him gun down a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So, and then he reloads his shotgun and goes over and shoots Gene Hackman in the face while that guy's on his back unarmed. Then on his way out of the bar, another guy's like, oh, and Clint Eastwood's like, oh, bam, shoots him too.
Right.
By my count, he murders, I think, 4 unarmed people in his big climactic hero shootout.
Right.
So, I mean, it's an utter subversion of what he's our hero. We're like, Bill Money, he's doing it for his family, but he pounds half a fifth of whiskey and then guns down a bunch of unarmed
murders
men.
a bunch
Just
of people.
Murders a fucking room full of people. It's super intense shit. And I think that it's basically like the story of English Bob and Two Gun Corky is like a couple drunk dudes just shooting each other up.
Yeah.
It's so brutal. I think that final shootout, okay, like whatever else about the rest of the film,
sure,
that final shootout is one of the great Western scenes.
I agree. Yeah.
There's a great line in here too. Like, one of my favorite things about Gene Hackman's character.
Is he's Gene Hackman?
Do you love Gene Hackman as well? We haven't established this yet.
We haven't. No, I've loved Gene Hackman since Superman.
Oh my God, yeah. When he's like as Lex Luthor, he's so good. Okay, I like Gene Hackman too. So I've met some people.
I don't mind
like,
Gene Hackman being Gene Hackman. Like,
neither do I, because he's fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I like Gene Hackman's character as like the guy who's building his house, but where Bill Money has 0% like stake in his own myth, Little Bill, you can kind of tell, even though he's kind of retired from that life,
right?
He's very nuanced, because there's a part of him that when it's fanned a little bit, sort of like flares up again.
Well, that's why he keeps the writer.
Right, and he's telling story. He like corrects old stories, but he's also sort of like myth
editing
building
himself
for himself.
In it, yeah.
So, and there are great lines with Gene Hackman has my favorite line in the movie, which is when when English Bob says, "Little Bill, I thought you were dead," and Little Bill goes, "I heard that myself." Or he goes, I thought myself I was dead. Turned out I was just in Nebraska."
Right.
He's firing out. That's a quote unquote hero one-liner. That's the thing that Gary Cooper says before he quick draws and kills a motherfucker. Right. So in a weird way, like Gene Hackman's character is like, well, he has one. He's got a one-liner on tap, and he's like, this is gonna play. You guys ready for this? I thought I was dead too. Turned out I was just in Nebraska.
It turns out I was just
sweep to the gun to one side, And then we're like, okay, where's Clint Eastwood's one-liner? And he's like, I'll fucking shoot all you to death.
Like, well, easy, Clint. Like, Jesus Christ, buddy.
Pump the brakes, Chief. How about like a little whip crack and like, see you later, ma'am, or no more guns in the valley, or
did I fire 6 shots or only 5? No,
right?
Nothing?
Like, do you feel lucky?
Nothing?
He's just like, I'll fucking murder all of you, stupid assholes. You're like, oh my god,
fuck me, Clint.
I love how rough, how ragged, how worn down he is. He's like he literally gets
I think another reason why I don't like this movie, and this isn't bullshit, I'm not even kidding. Every time I watch this movie, I get sick.
Why?
Like, I actually get like,
physically.
I'm just coming over it. Like, I'm just getting over a cold. I watch this movie, and it's like, it's so affecting to watch him. Like, he fevers like nobody else. Like,
Clint Eastwood's
Clint
fever?
Eastwood he's sick.
Oh yeah,
He's
you get
gotta be
sympathetic sick.
He
looks like shit.
He looks like garbage, and I always get sick like a day or two after I watch this movie. Like, I get a fever because I'm like, I get the Bill Money fever for some reason.
He really does. Like, he truly looks ill.
Like, he's got that, like, not that he's like shaking.
He's sunken into
but
himself.
You can tell that he has like the hot sweats and the cold sweats, and he's just drenched with fever sweat, and it's just like
part of it I think is like how his mouth stays a little bit open,
like he's having
like he's breathing through his mouth, and I think another part of it is how he like pulls his
jacket up around his
like
his
how he
face
keeps his hands near his chest where it's warm.
Yep.
Ooh, he does sick very well.
Yeah.
Oh my god! And when he's lying in the bed in the shack, and he's like talking to Ned, and he's like, "I'm afraid to die," and he talks about seeing his wife and all the that is because that's when a hero's on his deathbed. He's like, "Tell my children that I love them,
right,
and give them my share of the money," and then he dies.
Right.
This guy's like, "Please don't let me die, Ned. I'm so scared of hell, Ned." It's like he's a man.
He's afraid.
He's just a man, and the fucking Schofield kid is like. Yeah, he must have been delirious, because if he'd had been in his right mind, he never would have said that. It doesn't get it.
Doesn't get it.
I wrote a note here, and I don't remember what this is in reference to. Davy's death scene is one of the most brutal things I've ever seen. I don't remember who the fuck Davy is.
Who the hell is Davy?
I don't know, but there's apparently a super brutal death in this movie. You
even wrote the note about it.
It was only like a week ago. I'm looking on this one. The scene where the kid is drinking under the tree. A lot of rough edges, a lot of...
Oh, is Davy the dude taking the shit?
No, I know what it is. Oh, that's a fucked up scene. I remember what it is. Holy shit.
I'm just eager.
It's when they're camped up. It's when we find out Ned's vision's going to. They're camped up, and they shoot the guy's horse, and then they clip him in the leg, and his leg breaks under the horse, and he's crawling for cover, and Clint is firing, misses, which again, what do you see in movies? He's a dead shot.
Yeah.
Everyone,
always
one
hits
kill.
His mark, yes.
Yeah, and what do we see? Clint Eastwood misses like 4 shots, and then he gut shots him. It's not even like blam, and he goes, ugh, and he dies. He shoots him in the guts, and he's dying and dying, and he's like, I want some water.
Oh, that is brutal.
Can I have some water? And they don't like run away. Clint Eastwood's just sitting up there, and even even fucking Bill Munny's like, give him some water for God's
Jesus
sake.
Christ, give him some water. Yeah.
Promise you ain't gonna shoot. I ain't gonna shoot. I'm just so thirsty. Oh, I'm just so thirsty. Is he dying? Yeah, he's dying.
Jesus.
Oh, I don't want to die. Oh, it hurts. It's long.
It's long, yeah.
They let you sit with that. And again, like, it's not the, like, you know, like the boom, boom, boom.
Right.
Right. Ay, caramba. You know, like,
right, yeah.
You know, and then they die. It's like,
No, like this dude's gut shot and...
oh, it hurts so bad.
Yeah.
Give him some water.
Jesus
God.
Christ, give him some fucking water. Yeah.
It's hard to sit and listen.
I'm glad you remembered who that was.
Me too, because that, as soon as I'm like, who's Davey?
Who's Davey?
I'm like, Davey. And then I'm like, what were some brutal death scenes? I'm like, well, there was that 6-minute scene of that guy
Right,
just begging not to
begging.
die and asking for water. It's hard to sit and even as an audience, because we don't barely see the guy who got shot.
No,
Mostly
you
we just
hear
sit
him
with
like-
Clint,
yep.
and you see Ned kind of sitting on a rock, and as Ned's listening to that guy screaming, you're like, Ned's not going to continue with
Nope.
this. Ned's done.
Yep. He is
Oh.
checked out.
It's when you're drunk and you're shooting people, maybe you don't remember the 5 minutes where you listen to a dude just
begging for...
be afraid of what is about to happen.
Yeah.
That's hard to sit with that. To just, even as an audience member, you're like,
Oh, this isn't
give him a drink of
fun.
water, and then can we cut to like a fun horseback
Right.
riding scene
A
or
gambling
something?
scene or something.
I love when
like,
when his friend gets to him to give him water. Oh, you killed him, you sons of bitches. Is he dead? He's gonna be. Oh
Right,
God
yeah.
damn, it's really rough. I'm just a huge fan of that. So that's my take.
Perfect.
Unforgiven. So where are you sitting on this?
Okay, so you didn't completely change my mind on it, but you did bring up some interesting pieces that I hadn't really put together.
Yeah.
You kind of blew my mind a little bit on some of the what I consider to be like sort of tropes or whatever, but like
Right.
no, it's there's more meat on the bone clearly, but it's still just one of those movies where it will never be my favorite Western. It just won't be.
Well-
And I'm glad that I watched it again.
Yeah, me too. Especially now that we're in this mindset of the deep dig, because I
Right.
saw so much more than I was
Yeah.
gonna see. And
And this is like because we're new to the podcasting thing, and I'm new to like doing this unpacking. It's when I think back to me watching through this movie, I don't think that I was watching it with a fair enough critical eye. I was watching it through the lens of I know that I've seen this movie several times before. I don't really care for this
it's
movie.
harder to do if
It's
you've
hard
seen
if
the
you've
movie
seen it
too.
before,
Yeah,
right?
because you have some preconceptions.
Exactly. So I maybe didn't give it the time or the attention that I needed to really sort of unpack it and think about it, and so that's lesson learned there.
Yeah.
And how to maybe be aware of that moving forward. That's another reason why I love doing this podcast too. Is like it's like we're sort of going to a weird sort of film school
It's totally
together.
a film
It's
school,
like
yeah. Well, and the thing that you have helped me do with Prisoners
Mm-hmm.
in season 0 and with this movie, at the beginning of the episode, the second you said that you didn't like the movie, I was like, what? And then you pointed out like 2 things, and I embarked upon my like, well,
Right.
here's some things you might not have seen, but at the same time, Bird will definitely attest. I slavishly love things. Like I'll see
sure.
anything and I'm just like, this is great. It's the best thing I ever saw in my whole life. And then I don't remember it like 3 days later. But this movie, oftentimes, because of the stuff that I mentioned that I think is very clever, and I always enjoy deconstructing something that's archetypical like a Western, there are definitely weak performances in this. The
Yeah.
Schofield kid's performance, while I like the character and the function he performs...
That's another thing. It's not necessarily that he's written poorly. I think that he could have been written maybe better, but his performance is just not good.
There's
at all.
definite performance flaws in the Schofield kid
Right.
character. Some of the stuff with the
I don't care
prostitutes...
for the writer. I think he's overly comical at times. I think he needs to be sort of a...
He's kind of comic relief in a movie that's
Yeah, I
really
just
dark, but also in a movie that is showing us the reality. Maybe you
Right.
don't need a comic relief.
I don't think you... Or just a different kind of comedy.
Right. I think that I think in a weird way, Gene Hackman is comic relief.
Yeah,
Oh my God! How about that scene where he hands the writer a loaded revolver?
Oh yeah, and then the
That's
writer-
tense as fuck.
Is it okay if I give it to? How about I give it to English
it to
Bob?
him.
He's like, give it to him. Like, oh shit.
Really?
Okay.
give it to him.
And he doesn't take it, right? So, but that is intense, yeah.
That's that whole scene with from the
anything
moment
with Hackman. Any Hackman
good.
scene is
yeah.
brilliant.
Hackman's performances are awesome. I love English Bob. I love his performance in this. I think that he's not, I'm not going to say he's the strongest, but he's a very solid character, and his character is very interesting. I think he plays, because we find out his backstory is all bullshit. I think watching his performance, you get that. He's actually playing, yes, I'm a drunken coward with but he's playing surface acting, but there's deeper acting.
Deeper things going on, yeah.
It's not Daniel Day-Lewis, but it's very good acting.
It is there.
And Morgan Freeman, he's Morgan Freeman.
It's Morgan Freeman.
It's bizarre. Even when he's playing Morgan Freeman, I'm like, look at how Morgan Freeman's playing.
He's right. I always expected Andy Duprat.
But Eastwood especially, I think that there's something, especially because we did record out of order because we did watch The Searchers. Watching John Wayne's best performance ever, and then talking about Clint Eastwood's performance in this movie, I like Eastwood's performance. There's no way he's gonna top the performances that he gave when he was a young man in the Leone movies.
Oh no,
Man with No Name created a type of cowboy.
Exactly.
But in this movie, I like that in the beginning when we first see him, it's like he's got 10 words that he can say. Because he's so isolated and he's
him, the kids and the pigs, right?
He's like a piece of killing machinery that's stopped and is now rusting and rusting and rusting. And until this kid comes over and is like, we'll split it half and half, $500, and he gets his guns out. And from that point on, you can almost see his range expanding a little bit. It's not I think it's a great performance. I don't think it's masterful. I don't think it's one of the best. But watching that performance grow, watching his range increase, watching the capacity for violence increase slightly.
And then the oil can that fully lubricates the hinge again, which is the whiskey bottle.
When he puts down half a thing of whiskey, Jesus Christ! I think we both agree that this is not of the 4 westerns we watched, it's the weakest.
I would agree. Yeah,
I'm totally with you. I enjoy it. I totally enjoy it. But I would also say that from the moment he starts drinking to the end of this movie belongs in the canon of these 4 films.
Yes.
That last scene is definitely on par with every other movie we've watched. Searchers is on a level of its own, but this is still definitely in that ballpark because that last scene
fits firmly for me. I would agree. Act 1 and 2.
Definitely. Can I tell you about some cinematography that I noticed?
Yes, absolutely.
That I just loved.
Yes.
I wrote that big whack of black, the opening sequence, where 2/3 of your screen. This is a bold move for a cinematographer to just black out 2/3 of the image that the audience is looking at in a visual medium. And then everything else, it's that blood sky and that the earth is black.
Yep.
Everything is...
It's the tree, the house, and the tombstone, right? Or the headstone.
He's digging a grave.
That's right.
The opening sequence is digging a grave. And then the next time we see that shot, we have we do some town stuff, and basically we've done a 180. It's a reversal of that shot, and now I noticed this, and I don't think this is a mistake because this movie is very careful with its metaphors. The grave, once you flip that shot, the grave and his dead wife are now behind him.
Oh, that's probably intentional.
Probably intentional, right? So that he's moving on. His family is his focus, and the death is in the past. The other little touch of cinematography that I really enjoyed. Oh wait, no, that note is not about cinematography. That's the only thing I had. So, I did have one more character note which I liked was him shaving before he goes off to do all of the stuff because he's scruff. He's not unshaven, but he's scruffy.
Well, he's got a few days worth of hard riding, bristle.
Right,
yeah.
And when other than John Wayne in the winter portion of The Searchers, which we'll talk about next week,
yes,
I can't think of another Western hero who has scruff. They're almost always clean shaven.
That's a very good point. I never really thought about that before.
Right? I don't know what it is about that, but I think it's almost like, like rather he like puts on his gun belt and whatever,
Yeah.
but also he's like, all right, if I'm gonna go be this guy again,
I gotta go get.
gotta look the part, something like that. This movie has garnered much more praise than even I have given it in this episode. Definitely more than you've given it. So.
I don't hate the movies.
I know you don't, but let's talk about what the American Film Institute thinks about this film. Remember, we've been ranking our movies as we go.
Yes.
What do you want? Yeah, I'll let you guess.
Okay.
All right, so the American Film Institute rated Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid number 7 of the top 10 best westerns. Unforgiven has also appeared on that list. What number do you think it is?
2.
It is number 4. The American Film Institute gave Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid number 73 of the greatest movie of all time. Now, it's not Western. That's greatest movie fucking ever, period. This movie is also on that list. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, number 73. Where do you think this movie made it?
Top 50, I'm going to say 32.
Do you just think that the American Film Institute is
has a huge boner?
No, it's number 68. But still, it made their top 100.
Wow.
The only thing I can think, especially given the Schofield Kid's performance, which, come on, we can both agree that that's not a good performance.
No,
that's not
okay,
necessarily a
thank
good
you.
performance. But the only thing that I can think that put this movie, I can't understand number 4.
Number 4?
I don't get that because, off the top of my head,
But do you recall which ones were 1, 2, 3?
I know number 1 is
Searchers. Is
number 1 is
like,
Searchers, and then I got the numbers here. Number 1 is it's the greatest. Okay, the Searchers. We'll do this next week, but the Searchers was number 1. It's their number 12 greatest movie of all time.
Wow.
And yeah, so the Searchers is really high up the list, but right off the top of my head, the Searchers, Shane, Johnny Guitar, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, Stagecoach. I can name tons of westerns that I would put ahead of this in top 10 best westerns. So I'm not.
I stayed in a top 10 best western once.
What?
I stayed in a top 10 best western once. They had a great continental breakfast.
Was it in the? It was in the top 10 best westerns. It took me 2 seconds to get that.
I know
was
it
like,
did.
what are you talking about?
I think I made that joke on another podcast.
It's possible.
Yeah.
But I don't. Number 4 seems a bit generous to me.
Yeah.
But I would. For me, this would be number 10. But it would make the list, and for the reasons that we talked about in this show, that
And I can
deconstruction,
understand.
I think it does very clever things. I think the screenplay is very clever. I think some of the performances go a bit side to side. I think sorry, go ahead.
So fun. I think sometimes my reason for disliking this movie so much is because occasionally when I think about this movie, I get it confused with The Quick and the Dead.
I wonder where the AFI puts
The Quick and the Dead,
Quick and the
the
Dead.
Sam Raimi Western
classic.
Yeah, it's right up
That's
there.
the young Leonardo DiCaprio.
It is, yeah. Because every
Damn,
time
I'm fast.
Because every time I sit down to watch Unforgiven, I think I'm going to be watching The Quick and the Dead, and it's I'm so disappointed
Because it isn't The Quick and the Dead.
because it is not The Quick and the Dead.
We have a lot of Patreon episodes to do because
Yeah, we
now I want to watch that movie.
I know,
again.
right?
I put that with Purgatory,
Oh, absolutely.
Tombstone.
Yes.
Anywho, yeah. So I mean, I was the last thing I want to say. I don't even know. You know what? I was gonna leave on an unkind note, and I don't want to.
Do.
Let's leave on an unkind note. We'll
Yes.
ride into the blackness.
That's what I'm thinking.
I think the whole plot of this film essentially revolves around it's a revenge western in a weird way, but it's also a total deconstruction because it's about two cattlemen, two cowboys essentially,
Right.
who cut up a prostitute's face and basically take away her livelihood, mutilate a woman, which is super brutal. This Bird pointed out when I watched some of this with Bird.
Yeah.
She said when we finally saw her scarred face, Bird's like, oh, she doesn't look that bad. And I was like, yeah, they probably could have put a couple more bucks into some scar puckers, a little bit of keloid,
oh, she's healed really well.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, a lot of betadine back in the past, eh? Jeez. They just made sure that they got their Neosporin on
Right.
there.
I mean, they got right to her.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cold compress.
Cold compress, keep the swelling down. She saw the local plastic surgeon. She does. She looks pretty good for being cut up, but
it's horrible. But
it's bad to say. But like, they definitely could have made that a bit rougher. But oh my God, wasn't that a great line? When Clint Eastwood's talking to her, and he goes, "When I said before, you look fine. You ain't ugly like me."
Oh,
that's a line, dude. When he says "you ain't ugly like me," I was like, "Whoa, Clint Eastwood." Woo! If there is a hero one-liner, that might be.
That would be the one.
Damn, that's a great line. I love that. You ain't ugly like me. But so a lot of the plot centers around this group of prostitutes, and I think that many of their performances are a bit not amazing.
Right.
I think what it is we've seen a lot of prostitute performances in westerns. There's like a type, right?
Yeah, no, I would agree. Yeah,
and rather than play people, I feel like a lot of those actresses just
choose to play the archetype.
They're not playing a human. They're not playing a person. They're playing a prostitute in a western. You know what I mean?
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas Gene Hackman has many layers, and even English Bob has 2.
Right.
And Clint Eastwood has this weird, like, creaky thing going on, which I'm a huge fan of, and you didn't respond to. But he definitely has a nuanced performance.
Sure.
I think in a lot of ways they are kind of cardboard people. Like the woman who like puts out the bounty, her whole thing is like she's fiery and don't take no shit.
Yep, you have each of the.
Yeah, but she doesn't have another side.
That's
She's
just all it is.
Now I'm yelling out the window. You're gonna give her a horse? Get the hell out of here with your horse. He's gonna kill all. That's her.
That's her.
And the other one, the one who gets cut up, her whole thing is
mousy and.
Well, I got cut up.
Right.
And. No, I guess I would give you a free one.
I'm just real sorry, mister.
But she doesn't have another. There's no more depth than that.
That's
if there was,
they're cardboard people. That's a really. That's. I think you stated that.
You could have, and you could have done so much too. Like if you had got, I wanted to get a sense that her name's Delilah. I can't remember her last name. Delilah's the one who gets cut in the beginning of the movie.
Because I always make the joke in my head is Delilah After Dark, and it's like the whole.
Jesus. I wanted to see if I had gotten I wanted a sense that Delilah before she got cut was different than Delilah after. Because that's a huge changing moment. That's an impetus for change.
Right.
After you get cut up by a man in the Wild West, especially Clint Eastwood's vision of the Wild West, which is brutal. That will change you. But I get the sense that she was that way before, too, and nothing is different now. The only thing that's different now is they have offered a cash reward, which has set the plot in motion.
Right.
I wanted to see, like, she used to be so lively and full of life.
She isn't.
Or some character. Yeah, but there just isn't any of that. And it really did feel kind of cardboard to me. However, the last fucking 20 minutes of this movie are amazing. All right. I have nothing else for this. Do you?
No. I mean... I don't hate the movie. It's just not my favorite. And
sure.
Like you said, there's a lot of cardboard.
I'm glad you know what? That note about the performances. The only reason I found the cardboard people in my head just now was because you gave me the courage to look at the weaknesses of this film. But I'm also glad that I was able to show you some of the
more
other...
deep, like the creaking hinge. I think there might be a little more going on to Clint Eastwood's performance than I saw.
And I think the big one for me is using the Schofield kid as like the key to unlock.
As a key, right?
Because man, I see so much in this film when you look through his eyes, his patinaed, foggy, blinded, overacted eyes.
I can't believe man died just on account of pulling the trigger.
Well, just wipe your lips again with your thumb.
With your thumb.
God, I hate
Take another pull off that bottle, son.
There are bits. There are little acting bits that I love, and there are bits where I'm like, "That's a crutch. Why are you doing that?
Why are you doing that?
That is a fucking crutch. That wiping. That I'm taking a pull and now I'm wiping my lips.
Yep.
I'm taking a pull and now I'm wiping my lips.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I just if he'd done it once, maybe it would have played. But he did it like 4 times, and I'm like, don't do that. Give the bottle to Clint Eastwood so we can get the last 30 minutes of this movie going.
Exactly. No, I'm good on this one, and
on
I'm
this too.
excited for next week when everyone gets to listen to The Searchers.
Right. That episode, which you are going to hear, which we already recorded, is great. I think it's the best episode we've done this season.
And probably one of the best movies we've seen in this season so far.
Absolutely.
So that's definitely, we mention it next week, and it's a strong contender.
It's a very strong contender.
For at least movie of the quarter.
By far our longest episode, too. We just went
ham
rabbit
on that,
hole.
yeah.
I think we pulled that movie about as apart as we could in a reasonable amount of
sounding
time.
like assholes.
Yeah, like
about
it would have turned into like a class
Right,
if we'd gone any farther. It's an amazing film, and it's a really good episode. So
can't wait for y'all to hear it.
Yeah. Speaking of all of y'all, we did all the Patreon stuff up top.
front, yeah.
However, if you're listening to us on iTunes, if you could just take a moment out of your day to rate and review us, especially a 5-star review, the more reviews we get, and especially 5-star reviews, that helps get our podcast in front of more people.
Yes.
It gets the more reviews you have, especially the 4 and 5-star reviews,
boosts you up there.
It boosts you up. It gets you in front of new listeners, and also it'll help you get become a recommended podcast for people who listen to similar things based on reviews. So if you can give us a rate and review before you head on out, that would be amazing.
Very much appreciate that. Thank you.
There are apparently, I told Karl the other day, there's apparently a bunch of spots online where you can listen to us that
we didn't even know about.
I do not upload the podcast to as many websites as we are on, so you're probably, I hope you're catching us through iTunes, but if you're not, you're probably still, we're definitely out there. So if you want to check out more stuff that we're doing, you can always go to patreon.com/MaxPeterson. If you want to check us out on the social medias, you're pretty much just on Facebook, right?
Just on Facebook.
That's okay. So you're on the Facebooks at Wayward Trips, WAYWARD TRIPPS, Wayward Trips. I'm on Instagram, actual Max P, and I'm barely ever on Twitter, and I hate Facebook with a passion. So that's pretty much it. So The Searchers next week, and then the week after that we begin.
Oh dear Lord!
Whole new theme, Nicolas Cage, a month of the mad.
I can't wait. Oh, those movies are going to be so delicious.
Bird came up with the perfect because our podcast is measuring flicks.
Yes.
I like to come up with quippy names for our themes. It's not always possible, but Bird came up with a great one. I was like, "What do you call the Nicolas Cage month?" And she goes, "Nick Picks."
That is brilliant.
That is sheer brilliance.
Bird.
So May is gonna be Nick Picks month, and we're doing all Nicolas Cage all the time. All right, cold outro. I know it's coming every time.
I know
and I
you
never
do.
spend a single second thinking about what I'm gonna
Which is
fucking
what
say.
makes it perfect.
It is true, and actually, there's a lot to work with in Unforgiven. This is really just me vamping, as I think. There really is only one way to sign this one off, especially because this is Clint Eastwood's final word on the Western. I would like to honor his statement and let the two of us just, on a pale horse, ride off into the blackness.